Well, happy Wednesday, everyone. Josh is Severe Weather. I appreciate you joining me here this evening as we break down what looks to be a significant outbreak of cold and some rare winter weather, all the way maybe down to the Gulf Coast and into the southeastern United States as we get into next week. Now, that's a bit of time away still. So, right now, it's a little early to start getting too specific, but what I'm going to do is kind of break down what's going on now, what is looking like it may happen and who's at most risk of seeing some potential problems for next week. Here's a look at what we are talking about temperature-wise today. And if you look at the country, it has warmed up considerably in the Rockies and Plains, but it is much colder in parts of the Great Lakes and Northeast. 17 degrees in Chicago this evening, right as it's getting dark out. 19 in Pittsburgh, where I am here in Raleigh at this video. We are down to about 32 degrees and dropping further. It is, though, not terribly bad in the deep south. We're looking at 50s and 60s, a little cool, but compared to how it's been over the last couple of weeks, we will take it. And the southwest is nice and warm, 70 in Phoenix this afternoon, 72 in LA and San Diego. And most of the snow that's fallen here has been in the lake effect areas. We've got that cold air pouring in over the lakes, amounts as high as 18 inches in places like Sardinia and 16 inches in Point Rock and 13 inches in Casadega. And for the most part, this is not really associated with an actual storm, but just from instability coming over the lake, some snow squalls out there as well. And you can see the map is relatively quiet here rather than the last week when we saw a couple of major storms, one through the central U.S. and then the next one into the southeast and Texas. We see a very small area right now under winter weather advisories. That includes western PA, eastern Ohio, parts of West Virginia, and around Lake Ontario, and a winter storm warning across the Allegheny Plateau and the Appalachians here from the Laurel Highlands down into parts of West Virginia. And aside from that, we do have some wind challenges still in the high plains here, just east of the Rockies in Montana and in portions of Wyoming. And fire weather conditions continue, unfortunately, in Southern Cal, but we do even see that looking like it's going to improve here in the next couple of days. So you can see on our water vapor image right now, here's the trough bringing the colder air into the eastern United States, and there's an area of high pressure that's building in to the west of it. So that's keeping things a little bit quieter for the time being. Now, as we move our way towards the end of the week, you will see there's a big upper level low that is stuck to the west of California. In fact, the dry air is actually feeding in from east to west, creating those dry conditions. But on the south side of that upper low, we do see moisture tracking across the southern United States from Mexico into South Texas into Florida. And these cloud elements are going to continue to spread eastward here. And that's a sign of what's to come here over the next few days as a broader trough makes its way in. Looking at California, I do have some better news for you here. The air is still very dry out there this evening, but take a look at some of these dew points as we get into the day tomorrow. They start off very low in the morning, but look at the afternoon and beyond. We're going to see more of a Pacific flow sending much higher amounts of moisture with dew points in the 30s, 40s, and even low 50s on shore here. And this is going to help out quite a bit. It doesn't mean what's out there now is still not going to be a problem, but it is definitely going to add some moisture in where we need it the most. And things should continue to improve here for the end of the week. So this is certainly a step in the right direction. The wind speeds also will be coming down. They are breezy still in the usual locations here, and we'll see some stronger winds through the grapevine here and into the higher elevations. But as we move this beyond tonight and tomorrow, the winds do die off significantly, and tomorrow's wind gusts are quite a bit lower across all of the LA basin. So it does pick up towards the late night hours again in the mountains here. But generally speaking, this is definitely much better news. So prayers are being answered here. It's going to take some time, of course, but we are seeing some much improved weather. Now, looking at the eastern part of the country, we do have damp weather across South Texas and across Louisiana. And this is primarily going to push offshore here. We're going to see some drier air move in, but we'll still have cloud cover in place across the Gulf states into Florida, but definitely not a terribly bad weather pattern. Our challenges are going to be in those higher elevations and in the Great Lakes region here as you see the instability. You see these dashed blue lines indicating colder air aloft that continues to feed in round after round here. So we're going to be dealing with a burst of heavier snow continuing into tomorrow night and then finally wrapping up as we get into Friday with relatively quieter weather. Aside from that, There's going to be another clipper system that crosses Lake Superior into northern Ontario. And then we're going to start to see moisture beginning to return as we get to the very end of this week and into Friday night and Saturday morning here. You'll see milder air moves in, so we're going to see a return of rain, and some of it will be on the heavy side, maybe even some thunderstorms into places like Louisiana, Mississippi, western and middle Tennessee, and even some rain all the way up into parts of central and northern Illinois. And at the onset of this, temperatures, you'll see kind of this little pink area. Let me zoom in to show that to you here in the Great Lakes region here. Let me find that for you. You see this little pink area here around the south side of Chicago into northwest Indiana. This is a late evening Friday. Yep. And you can see that it will be cold enough for a little bit of freezing rain at the onset and some wet, slushy snow as well. So it is warming up from where we are now, but it's not quite warm enough yet to get rid of all of the cold. And the other thing we've got to be watching here as I take you off more to the west is going to be another push of some pretty cold air coming down. And not just cold air. I mean, you see the mountain snow, that's not unusual, but the fact that temperatures are going to drop like a rock and snow may come down very hard on the front range here of Colorado here tomorrow night, or Friday night, I should say, as well as more rounds of snow coming down here across parts of Wyoming and Montana. So winds picking up, temperatures dropping like a rock, and visibility getting very low. Could create some very hazardous travel. And in particular, I'm worried about Friday evening across the front range of the Colorado Rockies. So we'll be tracking that. Here's a look at snow totals for the next 60 hours and some significant numbers in the shorter range here over parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and western New York, and even a little bit of snow all the way down into the mountains of Virginia and North Carolina and East Tennessee. Lighter amounts around Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. Generally speaking, the NAM model is showing us that unless you're right near the lakefront, you're going to get less than an inch of snow. But it's not going to be pretty. We're not going to see much sun. The wind cranks up, just typical January weather. Nothing exciting at this point. When you get into the mountains here of West Virginia, the ski areas are going to do well again. And yes, the model shows 21 inches. Probably not going to be that much, but definitely a foot potential here on the Laurel Highlands, and especially in parts of West Virginia, places like Davis and Snowshoe again. But even western PA, closer to the lake, eastern Ohio, a couple of inches are possible. Akron, Canton could see a couple of inches. Columbus may see an inch or two. Charleston, West Virginia, and Parkersburg, you could pick up an inch or so of snow. And we could even see some of that light snow sneaking eastward towards the Poconos, towards Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, all the way down maybe into the Schuylkill and Delaware River valleys, and possibly even into northeastern Maryland and northern Delaware as well. So we are going to get a little bit of that snow, but I think the bigger story is what's to come beyond this period. So cold weather continues tonight into tomorrow morning, and temperatures will start to rebound a little bit here when we get to the end of the week, but it's not really heading up until we get to Friday across the south central states, and then over the weekend out ahead of our next storm system. And it's going to be brief and temporary as we get another shot of cold coming down. This is a look at the upper level pattern. This is the European ensemble, and I'm going to show you what's coming soon. And we've talked about this for a while, but now that we're getting closer to that event, we start to see a little bit more of a definite forecast here at this point. It's not just, well, this probably could happen, or here's kind of an average. Now we've got a little bit more consensus moving ahead. And what you're going to notice here is that we do have a pretty big, ample ridge of high pressure set up over Alaska. And then you'll see the blue colors indicating cold air aloft. And the interesting thing here is that the cold air is actually coming from Siberia across the pole, North Pole, all the way down into the middle of Canada, and then swinging all the way down here. So this is what we call cross-polar flow. And this is what feeds us the kind of cold that leads to significant cold waves, very high heating bills, and the setup for winter weather. So where this trough ends up landing next week is going to play a huge role in does it pick up moisture here from the southwest or from the Gulf of Mexico? Or is it just fleeting? Does it move through the lakes? It's cold, it's dry, we get some mountain snow, and then that's that. Well, you can see here next week, especially the second part of the week, from about now on to the end of the week, there is still a significant trough digging back to the south of California. And what that can do is draw some moisture between this trough and between the ridge that'll be centered east of Florida. And that sets the Gulf of Mexico up for some potential mischief here. And we've talked about this for a few days now, but we're starting to see it come maybe more to a reality at this point. We do see this trough lifting out, and high pressure does rebuild here at the end of the month. So Florida is going to warm up significantly, and we are going to see temperatures moderating across the rest of the eastern U.S. But It doesn't mean we're going to escape winter storms. It just means the extreme cold does retreat north and going back to places where it typically would be at the end of January. So that's what we're looking at. February should end up milder. This doesn't mean we can't have a big storm on the East Coast. What it means is we're probably not going to have snow on the Gulf Coast. So that's the difference we're talking about. Here's temperature anomalies. You can see it's pretty warm across Canada. It's chilly across the east. We do warm up briefly here towards the end of the week. Still chilly, though, in the southeast and mid-Atlantic region. And then Saturday is our big transition day. This is the 18th. And you're going to see that eastern Canada, northeast, all the way down to Florida, overall is going to be above average, with the exception of where it's raining and possibly snowing back in the mountains here. But take a look at what's coming here. This is a huge shot of cold, one that kind of reminds me of what we had right before Christmas a few years ago, that huge outbreak that we had. We may see a few record lows out of it, but I think the bigger story is how intense it is and how big an area it covers. And you can see here early next week, Martin Luther King Day and Inauguration Day in D.C., it is cold coast to coast here. There's very few places above average across the United States. Northern Mexico's cold. We see the cool down coming all the way down into Cuba at some point here by Monday night into Tuesday. And outside of South Florida, we just continue to see the cold moving south and east. So some very cold days and nights coming next week before temperatures begin to rebound here at the very end of the week. But down south, it's going to take a while to get rid of the cold. We're talking multiple freezes here coming up until we get to maybe the end of next weekend. After that, look, there's more cold coming, but it is going to meet some resistance here as high pressure builds back. So a big battle zone, and those are the areas we get those big winter storms. So we're going to be watching at the very end of the month of January to see what happens there. So this is just a European operational. It's just one model. We're going to probably see this change at some point. Did want to show you DC as a frame of reference here. Take a look at the temperature drop that's coming here Monday into Tuesday. Below freezing during the day Monday, down to 15 and below zero possibly on the European. We've got a lot of places that are going to feel that cold. I'm going to take you down to Atlanta here just to give you an idea. Atlanta will not get above freezing for a few days here. It's going to be really cold all the way down to places like Houston. If you look at Houston Hobby here, there's a potential that we have a day where it doesn't go above freezing. And that's very significant. I'm somebody who grew up on I-10 in Baton Rouge. Any day that the temperature doesn't get past freezing is a day that schools very well could be closed. It does bounce back quickly here, but it's going to take a few days to get us out of the freezer here. So more of that to come. Well, let's talk about the snow now, because that is something to watch. And this is the possibility of seeing snow on the ground, at least an inch, and the usual places have it now through the end of the week. We start to see, though, the potential growing across places like West Texas and western Kansas and Oklahoma, and eventually getting all the way down into places like Texas and Louisiana. And we start to see a couple of areas where obviously it's not going to snow, like the West, outside of the mountains here. There's a snow hole where it's going to be so cold that everything stays and slides by to your south. And that would include places like Omaha, Kansas City, maybe Madison, Wisconsin, Sioux Falls, Des Moines, St. Louis, through about this time next week. Chances are going to be better for snow to your south than over you, it looks like, which is fine. You got plenty a couple weeks ago. But you can see holes filling in here as well across the Carolinas, up the East Coast, all the way up into Maine. And I'm going to zoom in to show you, but there's a possibility if you take all of the ensemble members and say, where could it snow, that this gets all the way down to the western Gulf of Mexico and even down to the Florida Panhandle, and that would be extremely rare. Looking at it a little bit more closely here, you can see when it could happen. Sunday night and Monday in the plains, and then down south Monday night into Tuesday, we have the possibility here, a 60% chance of accumulating snow in East Texas and in central and northern Louisiana, even a chance in Houston, and maybe even all the way down to Corpus Christi and San Antonio and Del Rio and even New Orleans and Gulfport and Mobile. It's not a great chance, but 20-30% chance. That is a strong signal for something to potentially happen here. And you can see that chance is still in effect until we get to about the weekend. Then we see those chances coming down. Looking at the rest of the Southeast, the obvious places will get it here through the end of the week. We may see chances increasing on Sunday around Richmond and up to D.C., so there could be fresh snow on the ground for Inauguration Monday from what's coming potentially on Sunday and Sunday night. New Jersey has a chance. Delaware's got a chance. But at this point, it's just nothing unusual. Now, take a look at what's coming in from the west here, though, Monday night and Tuesday, and our chances are climbing all the way up to about 50% around Atlanta and Birmingham and Jackson, 60% in Monroe and Ruston and Natchitoches and Nacogdoches, not to get those two confused. And Eastern North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, we've got a 50-50 shot here seeing wintry precipitation and at least an inch or more of snow. We can't give you totals this far out, okay? That would be nothing skilled enough to do that, but seeing at least a 50% chance run after run after run gives us some confidence that there's going to be something here. And while this area in purple is 10 to 20%, that's not great. It is a chance. So if you are planning to do any travel next week, or if you live down here, this is definitely something to watch. Temperatures brutally cold here over the next couple of nights in parts of the Northeast, but really that's nothing compared to what's coming here. You see where our front is here. It moves through Saturday night and then eventually into Florida on Sunday night. And look at how cold we're going to start the day on Tuesday. Teens to 20s below zero, where there's that fresh snowpack in the upper Midwest and parts of Canada. Teens in Raleigh and Atlanta, 20s down to the Gulf Coast, upper 30s and low 40s in Central Florida, 50s in South Florida. Could be even colder here depending on how our cloud cover works out here for Wednesday morning here. This is going to be probably as cold as it's been in a decade over this large an area. There'll be some places maybe that don't quite get to that, but this is some very cold air in place. It does start to moderate towards the end of next week, but we still have cold that may come back down here around the 29th and 30th. We just don't know exactly how that's going to play out just yet. So I'll show you operational models. And there's a newer run of the GFS, but it looks totally different than the other runs. So for now, I think it might be an outlier, but maybe it's onto something. But right now, you see there's decent agreement here of our storm system that moves east on Saturday. We're going to see some snow across the interior of the Northeast, some rain at the coast. And then we may see another wave that comes up the mid-Atlantic area and produces some wet snow over the North Carolina-Virginia border and the Delmarva, and maybe even up into Long Island, New Jersey, and up into coastal New England. This is not going to be a big deal, but we could see an inch or two out of this, maybe even locally more. What the bigger deal is the cold that follows, and then the potential for moisture to get caught up in it. And Tuesday, maybe some snow around Texas. And again, the GFS is back and forth on how this all plays out, but you can see the 12Z run has something across the interior of the Southeast and moving up the East Coast. That doesn't agree with the European exactly on how that plays out. In fact, the European's been a little bit more consistent. It does have our system in Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic on Sunday, moving out to sea early on Monday in New England. Here's our next system, and it's got Gulf moisture, it's got the cold, and the trough is a little bit buried back to the northwest, meaning we've got a better shot at seeing a potential system in the Gulf, which could bring snow and ice to the I-10 corridor and certainly the I-20 corridor. And the timing on this could change, but we're probably looking at Monday into Tuesday in the south central states, Wednesday into Thursday in the southeast, maybe even something that comes in right behind it towards Friday and early Saturday before we finally warm things up. So that's the European model. Here's the Canadian. It's colder than the others. It's probably overdone, but we're not sure yet. But you can see snow that tracks across here on Tuesday into Wednesday, ice farther south, and then maybe something for the Northeast heading into Thursday. And finally, the Icon model doesn't go out quite as far, but you can still see here after our system moves through the Southeast here early in the weekend, it gets a lot colder. Some snow could occur over Virginia into the Mid-Atlantic. And then we start setting things up here by Monday and Tuesday for another winter attack. So that's what we're looking at. Here's where the snow potential on the model shows up. Maybe a few inches, maybe more along this stretch here down south, I-20, over into the Carolinas. Maybe another wave behind it Thursday and Friday. That's the GFS. Here's the European. And you can see a little bit of a chance here in the Mid-Atlantic up into the Northeast Sunday night into early Monday. Then the bigger system that drops all the way down here into the Southeast here for Tuesday and into Wednesday. And somebody could get a very big storm, or this could be coming in pieces and we just see minor nuisances. But anytime you talk snow or ice in the deep south, we've got to be concerned. So it doesn't take much to cause problems. Here's the blend of all the models just to give you an idea of what they're showing. And the blend shows around an inch or 2 inches. So you take every model, you average it together, and we're seeing a good shot at an inch or more from central and north Texas, right on across southern Arkansas, northern and central Louisiana, all the way to the Carolinas and up into the Mid-Atlantic. And those numbers do come up here with maybe a second batch coming up at the end of next week. So more of this to come, but you can see it's pretty considerable. Ice could be an issue as well. Again, this is averaging everything, but we see that ice threat potentially down to I-10. Certainly the I-20 corridor in Georgia and South Carolina needs to be watching this. The time frame could be as soon as Monday night, Tuesday morning in the South Central states, Tuesday night in the Central Gulf Coast region, and Wednesday for the remainder of the Southeast, and maybe even coming all the way up to the Mid-Atlantic towards the end of the week. So rainfall also an issue. Louisiana is going to see some more heavy rain, nothing like what we had a few days ago, but we could see some significant heavy rain Friday night into Saturday in Alabama, western and northern Florida, into parts of Georgia, and that rain spreads into the Carolinas. The worst of it stays south of Fayetteville, Raleigh, and Charlotte, but it's not going to be pleasant here for the weekend in parts of the Southeast. So that's all I've got for you today. I've been traveling, so I really haven't had a lot of time to get too involved in this, but just know I'll continue to watch it for you all, and we're going to have some more detail coming up in the days ahead. We'll get to break things down once confidence starts to climb. But I appreciate everybody's time today. I thank you. I pray for your health and your safety. And I did mention that I pray. I am a Christian, and I give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who gives me this platform and this opportunity to serve others by sharing the good news and encouraging folks. Matthew 5:43 and 44, New King James Version says, "You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you." And it's really tough for folks to want to try to bless their enemies and people they don't agree with. But the Lord has done that through Jesus Christ, and salvation is waiting for us on the end, and he requests that we do that, or he commands that we do that, not just requests. So if you don't agree with somebody, or you've got a neighbor that you're disagreeing with, I would recommend just maybe going into prayer and praying for a change of heart, praying for God to intervene, because you can't change that person and how they're going to react. But what you can do is let God intervene in your life and can use you as a light in a dark time. And that is the good news I wanted to share with you here this evening. So I'll be back on tomorrow. Hope everybody has a wonderful night. Catch you soon. God bless you.